The trouble began with a glinting silver key, its edges catching the late afternoon sun like a forbidden promise. I spotted it just as Lisa, my neighbor with a vendetta sharper than a lawyer's pen, shoved it into my front door with the confidence of someone who owned the entire block. She didn't notice me lurking in the backyard of my cozy Portland home, hedge clippers in one hand, a half-eaten peach in the other, my eyes narrowing as I watched her fumble. The lock didn't budge, not because her key was a dud, but because the doorknob itself was a fake, a clever decoy I'd installed a week earlier after her last stunt. The Real lock was tucked behind a biometric panel under the porch overhang. A bit excessive, sure, but after Lisa tried to find me for my unsightly herb garden in March 2024, I decided paranoia was my new best friend. Lisa didn't flinch when the key failed. She just scowled, as if my door had personally offended her, and yanked harder, muttering about neighborhood covenant enforcement. Then she did something I didn't expect. She whipped out her phone and dialed not the police, but worse, the Homeowners Association enforcement line. I didn't even know we had one until that moment in our quiet Crestwood Lane cul-de-sac. She kept stealing glances at my doorbell camera, fully aware it was recording, acting like she was starring in her own courtroom drama. I strolled around the corner, wiping peach juice off my chin, and drawled, "Need help breaking into my house, Lisa?" She jumped like I'd materialized from thin air, her face flashing from startled to seething. "This key," she snapped, "is HOA issued to ensure safety and aesthetic standards." I blinked slowly. "You're trespassing, Lisa. The only thing non-compliant here is your understanding of property laws." She clutched her phone tighter, squaring her shoulders like she was about to argue a case on TV. "As head of the design review board, I have every right to inspect unauthorized changes. Your mailbox glows at night. Your fence is half an inch too tall. And that garden gnome? A clear violation." I glanced at my tasteful stone frog statue. "Lisa, that's a frog, not a gnome. And unless you're suddenly a city marshal, you don't get to shove keys into my door." She didn't respond, just stormed off to her gray SUV, gripping the key like a trophy. I knew this wasn't over. Lisa didn't make mistakes. She declared wars. Lucky for me, I had cameras, decoys, and a friend in the city's code office who owed me a favor from a zoning dispute last year. The next morning, a notice from the HOA was taped to my door, listing violations I'd never heard of: unapproved lighting, obstructive frog statue, defensive garden layout. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I called my friend Sarah at the code office. "Let me guess," she said, "Lisa's clipboard, a list of nonsense, and a grudge against your basil plants?" "Nailed it," I replied. She promised to swing by Lisa's place discreetly. I went petty. I upgraded the fake doorknob with a blinking red light, a faint ticking sound, and a tiny camera lens disguised as a screw. Lisa would try again, I was sure of it. 3 days later, as the HOA newsletter hit inboxes with a headline about hidden violations on Crestwood Lane, she returned. Same SUV, same clipboard, same audacity. I watched from my garage, screwdriver in hand, phone open to my camera app. She glanced around, then jammed the key into the lock. The light flashed, the ticking started, and Lisa froze. Her eyes darted to the camera, then the blinking LED. Then she screamed a full-on horror movie wail that set off dogs and porch lights across the street. She flailed, dropped her clipboard, and sprinted to her car, papers scattering like confetti. I picked up the dropped key, slipped it into a plastic bag, and texted Sarah, "Found her koi pond yet?" She replied with a photo of Lisa's unpermitted backyard pond, complete with neon fish and an illegal fountain. "Want me to frame it for your frog?" she asked. I laughed until I couldn't breathe. But Lisa wasn't done. She was like a general who'd lost a battle but was already planning the war. I reviewed the footage that night, zooming in on her face as the light blinked smugness melting into panic. Beneath it, though, was rage. She wasn't retreating. She was reloading. The next morning, her pond was the neighborhood gossip, especially since she'd once tried to find a neighbor for a too shiny bird bath. But this wasn't about irony, Anna Marie, it was psychological warfare. By noon, Lisa was at my door again, this time with a guy named Carl, a private compliance officer, with a buzz cut and a body cam that screamed, "I take this way too seriously." His badge looked like it was printed on a home laminator. "This is a formal inspection," he declared, measuring my flower beds and muttering about non-compliant shrubs. Lisa pointed at my porch lights. Those emit a purple hue against code. I smiled. They're the exact shade listed in the HOA handbook, page 19, section 3. Check it. Her face twitched. Hadn't expected me to know the rules better than her. They spent an hour poking around, finding nothing. Lisa's frustration grew with every calm fact I tossed her way. That night, she emailed the entire neighborhood a manifesto titled Crestwood Crisis, Rogue Modifications. It was clearly about me, complete with blurry photos of my frog statue. I laughed, then set my next trap. I tweaked my porch lights to flicker red, just shy of breaking any rules, and added a sign. Property monitored by active surveillance and decoy systems. At 6:03 a.m. the next day, my camera caught Lisa tiptoeing toward the door, key in hand. She hesitated when the light blinked, then backed off, whispering into her phone. I sipped my coffee, watching her unravel. That evening, the HOA called an emergency meeting at the community center. Lisa arrived in a floral blazer that could have doubled as wallpaper, clutching a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. She launched into a speech about my deceptive security systems and weaponized legal loopholes, proposing a temporary committee to seize control. I stood, holding a folder. Before we vote, I said, here's a record of Lisa's unauthorized HOA spending drones over backyards, fake parking tickets, all without board approval. The room erupted. Neighbors whispered about her overreach. Someone asked, she used HOA money for drones? Lisa's face turned the color of raw salmon. My motion to censure her passed 19-2. She stormed out, heels clicking like a metronome. But Lisa didn't quit. At 3 a.m. the next day, my camera caught her planting a too bright garden light in my yard, a clear setup to frame me for a code violation. I dug it up, photographed it, and left it on her porch with a note. Found your gift. Returning to sender. By noon, she'd emailed the neighborhood, alleging I was running a surveillance entrapment scheme. She CC'd a news station and the FBI. I laughed, then found an anonymous tip on my website. Check your doorknob. The key isn't what it seems. I dismantled the fake knob and found a tiny tracker. Lisa's attempt to prove I was dodging inspections. I sent everything footage, tracker, planted Lido the county land registry, requesting a review of HOA access protocols. They responded with an investigation into Lisa's unauthorized key use. She skipped the hearing, sending a rant about my AI-fabricated evidence. The county wasn't amused. Meanwhile, a local news crew interviewed her. She played the victim, but they had my footage. The story aired. HOA power trip gone wrong. Neighbors flooded my inbox with support. The HOA banned non-emergency master keys. Lisa resigned. Her house went up for sale, and I left a final gift on her porch, the fake doorknob, still blinking, with a note. You picked the wrong door. The neighborhood's quieter now, but I wonder, did Lisa go too far, or did I? Was this about rules, or something deeper: control, pride, belonging? Should HOAs have this much power? And what would you do if someone tried to unlock your life with a key that didn't fit? Comment below, hit like, and subscribe for more stories where the underdog bites back.